everyone. Good morning. It's really nice to see you all here. My name is Deborah Nobes, and I am a proud member of Team Canada, Team Atlantic Canada. We're here from the Port of Belledune in the province of New Brunswick. It's on the beautiful east coast of Canada. The Port of Belledune is in the midst of a very exciting transition. Just like many other ports in the world, many other parts of the world, we're moving away from fossil fuels and heavy industry toward green energy production and low carbon-based businesses. With support from all levels of government, we're transforming our operations and cargo mix to reduce our carbon footprint and make space for new technologies and new industries rooted in clean energy production. Our goal is to supply Western Europe with clean Canadian hydrogen. At the heart of this is our Green Energy Hub. It's a special green industry development district, which is being propelled by a new hydrogen project that's set to begin production and exports within the next 5 years. I'd like to introduce some people on the stage with me. First is Denis Caron, President and CEO of the Port of Belledune in New Brunswick, Canada. Denis has been at the helm since 2015, and he recently led the creation of a 30-year master development plan with an achievable vision for clean industrial development and renewable energy. Denis is a seasoned leader in economic development with decades of experience in senior levels of government. During his time at the port, he has overseen significant growth, attracting tens of millions of infrastructure investments from both private and public sectors. He has also built meaningful relationships with local communities and Indigenous rights holders. His goal is to ensure a shared vision for sustainable growth with shared benefits. Next, Rishi Jain, Managing Director, Business Development, and partner at Cross River Infrastructure Partners, which deploys industry-leading climate technologies and sustainable infrastructure solutions throughout North America. Rishi is leading the hydrogen production project at the Port of Belledune. With his partners at Cross River, Rishi has created more than $6 billion of sustainable infrastructure investment opportunities. He oversees project development and commercialization, stakeholder relations, and is closely involved with project financial structuring, and he also leads strategic partner relationships, like the ones with the Port of Belledune. Before we get started on the conversation, here's a quick video. I'd like to draw your attention to the screen about what we're up to at the Port of Belledune.
On the east coast of Canada, on the North Atlantic's beautiful Bay of Chaleur, New Brunswick's Port of Belledune is your connection to a cleaner tomorrow. We have a long-term plan to sustainably grow our marine cargo business and more, to generate renewable energy for export and supply clean, green industry. Our deepwater port operates year-round with easy access to sea, road, and rail. Our assets: 4 terminals supporting dry bulk storage, automated unloaders, conveyor systems, cargo cranes, lift trucks, bulk liquid storage tanks, and laydown space for oversized project cargo. As a Green Marine certified port, we're committed to environmental excellence on land and sea. But this is about more than ships. We're seizing opportunities to build clean energy projects, including hydrogen, wind, solar, and nuclear in the next 5 to 10 years. And as Atlantic Canada's leading biomass exporter, we're developing our infrastructure to meet the growing global demand. These projects will support emerging green industries and clean manufacturing businesses. With more than 1,600 acres of land available for development, our Green Energy Hub will supply global and local markets. As a Canadian port authority with a pro-business mandate, the Port of Belledune offers certainty and security. With strong connections to key European ports and support from the Government of Canada and the Province of New Brunswick, as well as Indigenous rights holders, We're ready to serve the growing world demand for clean energy and green products. Together, we are building a sustainable business future for generations.
Thank you for your attention. I'm going to start with Rishi, who is going to tell us about the project.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining us here. The project is really a multi-phase strategy that has a significant level of expansion and ultimately the goal of producing the world's cheapest zero emissions hydrogen. This starts with a phase one, 500 megawatts, along with our co-development partner, a Fortune 500 utility, who will be the owner-operator and provide all of the new generation. New Brunswick's grid is significant, and that's what drew us to the province, as well as the fact that they have made significant investments in advanced heat sources like SMRs, which we will then use to power the expansion of hydrogen production, ultimately leading to the lowest cost hydrogen in the world. We believe the first phase will be directly competitive at 500 megawatts with the US Gulf, including with their IRA, and that's because we're able to achieve a very high capacity factor owing to the very unique characteristics of New Brunswick's grid. We'll be producing 380,000 tons of ammonia in the first phase, and that will be expanded by over 1 million tons with the SMRs and the heat integration subsequently.
Rishi, can you tell us how this project compares to others like it? There's a lot of people talking about a lot of hydrogen projects here today and yesterday. How are we different?
Absolutely. So we were working on this hydrogen project before hydrogen became sexy. So that is to say that before the Russian invasion happened, we were working on this, and we took the view that this has to be, this is a global commodity, and a global commodity needs to be low cost. And the only way that industry will ultimately use a product is if it's the lowest cost and it can help replace what they're already doing. So a lot of work went into selecting the right spot, and Atlantic Canada started with New Brunswick simply because it is already a nuclear province. And that gives us a significant amount of existing baseload from which to draw and still be able to create an RFNBO compliant product.
So we're going to hear more about the Port of Belledune in a minute, but it's always nice when your friends say nice things about you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us about the Port of Belledune, why specifically you chose the Port of Belledune for this project.
Okay, yeah, happy to do that. So the Port of Belledune, I like to say, is the port that Canada forgets it has. So it is an industrial port. It has had, I think, at least $3 billion, and you'll see some of the pictures, at least $3 billion US of existing infrastructure development built into it, and it is very heavily underutilized. And that means that there's significant capacity and space and existing infrastructure for us to be able to put a very large world-scale project while also having very little population directly nearby. So we have the social license and the space and the existing infrastructure. And if we're being completely honest, Denis' vision of a master redevelopment plan that allows for the reindustrialization of the region with hydrogen as its core is what drew us completely to this port.
Excellent. So maybe we'll move to the port now. Denis, you've been CEO for the last 12 years.
Oh, 7.
7. Oh, math.
It feels
Sorry.
like 12. It feels
We're
like 12.
Not math. So, right. Maybe you could tell us more about the port and the value proposition for clean energy developments.
Sure. So thanks everyone. So the Port of Belledune is about 50 years old. It's part of the Canadian Port Authority. So in Canada, we have 17 ports, essentially, that are part of the nation. And as Rishi has indicated, we specialize in liquid and dry bulk. So the types of industry that we currently service, we service essentially a lead smelter, service cement. We have actually a power station that's using coal, and in other industries and other sectors in our region. So we've indicated to you on the map that you saw, we currently manage about 1,600 acres, but adjacent to us, we have another 10,000 acres of industrial lands for development. And what's nice about the port is that we have clearly infrastructure in place. We're connected to the grid because we have a power station at our port. And essentially, location with respect to Europe and looking at supporting Europe. All of our trade is either to and from Europe as we speak today. So we're heavily involved in, as I say, different types of industrial bulk product. And we see a tremendous opportunity to grow not only the port, but to support globally what's happening through the use of hydrogen and ammonia.
So we have a little video here I'm going to show you. It's kind of a flyover of the port. And maybe, Denis, you could just maybe describe to people what they're seeing here.
So sure. So in the background, you see essentially a power plant. That's a 470 megawatt power plant that's using coal, and it has to get off of coal by 2030. So we've been very involved in looking at biogenics. We're actually the largest exporter of wood pellets to the UK today, close to 500,000 tons of product. There's new product that is coming on the market that can replace coal, a coal replacement, a drop-in solution that we're working with the utility. So the power plant is very important. As mentioned, we're into liquid bulk as well. We have different types of capabilities for modular. If you look at just the pictures with respect to land, clearly we're on the Atlantic Ocean. Our port is a modern port, and we've invested just in the last 3 years close to $100 million in port infrastructure. So our 30-year strategy is really to look at, once again, how we use some of the raw material that we're currently getting and processing it into product. For instance, green steel or direct reduction iron. We're next to the province of Quebec. Quebec exports enormous amounts of iron ore globally around the world, so we can certainly use that material and process it into a value added. But once again, in order to do that, we need hydrogen, we need clean fuel.
So what we heard from Rishi about why he likes the port. What makes it a good match for Belledune from your perspective? No.
Oh, Denis.
Denis, from the port's perspective, why do you want this project?
So the project for us, as I said, on a short to medium term, we're looking to support the needs here in Europe. So we've signed agreements, MOUs with the Port of Rotterdam, with the Port of Hamburg, the Port of Wilhelmshaven in Germany. We're also having conversations with the Port of Antwerp. So those are all key ports that can receive essentially ammonia. On a longer term basis, we also want to use that energy source and grow essentially the production of hydrogen and ammonia to use in Canada to process different materials as well. So for us, we see that as a very significant opportunity. We are currently involved, as I say, in other types of energy. So in New Brunswick, our grid is 81% non-emitting. I would say that the 8 or 9% is in our backyard, where we have to convert the coal plant into using other clean fuel. And so there's great opportunity for us to grow at the port because we're connected to the energy grid and to the sources of that. So similar to Europe here, where you have a need to provide clean energy to industry, we believe that we can develop and process that, but over time we also would like to develop our port in our regions as well.
Awesome. So if you're just joining us, we're here from Team Canada, Team Atlantic Canada. Welcome. My name is Deborah Nobes, and I'm here with Denis Caron, who's the CEO of the Port of Belledune on the east coast of Canada, and Rishi Jain, who is managing partner with Cross River Infrastructure Partners, who's leading a large hydrogen project at our port. So we talked about the project, we talked about the port. Let's talk about Canada. Why is Canada a good place to be advancing this project, Rishi?
So we are New York based, but my partner and I are both from Toronto. So we have a very good view of really all of North America. And when we think about Canada, you have an opportunity where you have not a lot of projects, but a lot of support for those projects. meaning because the population is so thin and the landmass so large versus the US, where you have a lot with a lot of people trying to do a lot of different things, the ability to focus and move policy in a supportive way that is useful is really unique in Canada. Now, Canada is also a jurisdiction where you have very strong bipartisan support for nuclear, for advanced nuclear. New Brunswick has the one thing everybody agrees on is energy and the need for energy and nuclear. And with the Port of Belledune being a federal port that is also got provincial land around it, you have this you have the alignment across all spaces, including with First Nations, which will give us the opportunity and the chance to make Belledune one of the most energy-dense places on the planet. And that is because we're going to license the site for 3 to 4 gigawatts of advanced nuclear as the expansion on top of the 500 megawatt load that we'll be starting with and the 1,600 megawatts of new wind around the province. And all of that is only possible in Canada, in New Brunswick, at Belledune.
There's also a federal hydrogen strategy and some changes to the tax rules in Canada for producers. Denis, can you describe what that looks like for this project in New Brunswick, or what that looks like?
So clearly, we are a federal port authority, so the government of Canada is very important in assisting in the development. And I would say that the government of Canada is responding to the market needs in the sense that looking at a new investment tax credit that was released about a week ago. So the criteria is out there to encourage and entice industry to locate. Looking at federal strategy with respect to energy, but also a hydrogen roadmap, which is very critical in our deployment, if you will, of the strategy. And of course, we also have provincial support that is properly aligned. Rishi mentioned earlier the social license, and these types of projects are, essentially you've got to get it right. You've got to get out ahead of it. You have to have the proper engagement. You have to have the support, in our case, with a host of different communities, including First Nation communities. We are the first port in Canada that has signed a protocol agreement with First Nations in our province that dates back to 2018. So First Nations have been part and parcel of our development strategy going forth. They support the use of both, actually, nuclear technology and hydrogen production at our port. And the government of New Brunswick, in parallel, has really supported our efforts as well. So the province released before Christmas also an energy strategy and a hydrogen roadmap, and our colleague Jeff Hoyt will be speaking more specifically about that later on today. But just before Christmas, we also had the provincial government amend the Electricity Act to allow for behind-the-meter or behind-the-fence production of hydrogen or electricity through direct supply to the producer. So we see tremendous benefit looking at the cost benefits of doing this and being extremely competitive out in the global marketplace.
Yeah, if I could. So I do want to reiterate, because of the 40% ITC, that of course was created in reaction to the US IRA as Canada's response to that, and because of the position and the composition of New Brunswick's grid, the Belledune Hydrogen Project, we feel very confident, is directly competitive with the US Gulf. So production and is probably lower political risk given how mercurial our southern neighbors are. So
Nice way of putting it.
with this project and Canada, you can be sure of a level neighbor, a level ally, that even if the administration changes, is not going to suddenly wake up next to you and you're not going to know who they are.
Well, so that was going to lead me into my next question about how Europe can benefit, how European energy seekers can, what's in it for them doing business with Canada and Belledune?
Well, that's it. Stability, globally competitive pricing from Belledune. You've got the Federal Port Authority with the federal government as their main stakeholder. And you have this opportunity, in some places, from a social perspective, if the population isn't electrified, does it make sense from, say, a developing world who might have lower democratic values to export electrons when their own populations need those electrons? At Belledune, you have a heavy industrial port with a population that wants heavy industry and is used to exporting. That is what New Brunswick is, and it's the landmass the size, a quarter the size of Germany with the population the size of Dusseldorf. So we have the ability to do what we need to do, and everybody is on board with doing that.
And I think to add to that, we work exceptionally well with all levels of government. We're properly aligned, so I know red tape is a big issue with respect to the business. So we're able to facilitate a lot of that, whether it's the permitting on the environmental side, or whether it's policies, or in the case of the amendment to the Electricity Act, that took 6 months to do. So, I mean, the fact that we're small actually gives us an advantage that we're extremely agile and move quickly. So that's one of our features that we like to highlight.
And I do want to point out on this slide, how is New Brunswick helping? New Brunswick Power is a crown utility. With New Brunswick as the province is the main stakeholder. They are working very closely with us and our partner, the Fortune 500 utility, to reimagine how to handle this level of intermittency in their grid. And actually, because of New Brunswick's location between Quebec and New England and Nova Scotia, with very large interconnects between all of those power-hungry markets, we have the ability to move excess electrons in a way that almost nobody else does. Even Texas has trouble moving electrons from where their generation is to where their export potential is, where the port facilities are. We don't have that problem. And in fact, it's a unique situation to New Brunswick.
And if I could speak about New Brunswick a little bit. So in New Brunswick, we have the largest refinery in Canada. So Irving Oil produces 300,000 barrels per day. We have the only LNG plant in Canada, and we're one of 2 provinces that have nuclear. So energy for New Brunswick is something that we're used to, we're involved in, and we really see hydrogen as being, the next step in moving some of this energy forward. So we're very, as I say, proud of our accomplishments. We're punching certainly above our weight. We're able to respond to global demand, and I guess we're ready and able in providing hydrogen to these markets here.
And a lot of you have probably never heard of New Brunswick, and I am the biggest fan, and I'm not from New Brunswick, and so I'm trying to get New Brunswickers to understand what they have, which is an extraordinary situation.
Oh, we know.
Yeah.
We know what we have. It's a great
To start
spot.
talking about it.
Yeah. So this project, if you have questions, I'm gonna encourage you to save them in a moment because there's a mic and we'd love to have your questions from this group. This project is part of a larger transformation at the port. That is part of a very big story that's going on everywhere in the world about decarbonization, but it's happening at a smaller scale, kind of micro scale. And the port has really responded to this in a very thoughtful way. Denis, maybe you could talk more about the master development plan that you mentioned at the beginning.
So we have the second largest emitter in New Brunswick being the power plant. And up until 2019, we had the third largest emitter, which essentially was a lead smelter operated by Glencore. Because we border on the province of Quebec, we actually have a cement plant just on the opposite side that we service from our port, which would be probably the largest emitter in Quebec. So we're in a region where there's a lot of emissions. My former background was Deputy Minister of Environment and Deputy Minister of Economic Development in the provincial government. So I realize and recognize the challenges going forward. So our 30-year plan is really to decarbonize not just our port operations, but decarbonize the industries that we have around us, but also support the industries that you have here to help decarbonize as well. So as I mentioned, we're into renewable energy because we're connected to the grid. We supply close to 500 million tons of biomass to coal plants in Europe, primarily in the UK, that we will be doing similar with our power plant. Small modular technology is something that New Brunswickers are used to, and that technology hopefully will be deployed in the next 7 or 8 years. There are two development partners that we're working with on the development of that technology. And then, of course, hydrogen, ammonia, and other clean fuels are other areas that we're focused on as well. So it really is an industrial renaissance that we're creating in New Brunswick, in Belledune, but I dare to say that you're also trying to create here in Europe. So we're, as I say, very excited about this. We're excited that Cross River and the large Fortune 500 companies behind us. I don't know, it's a publicly traded company, so it's very difficult for us to say who it is, but it's a significant player in the energy sector. And, we're looking at moving, I guess, the permitting relatively soon on that as well.
Yeah.
So very excited.
So one more point about the community, just in terms of this very big change. You could see from the video, there's not a lot of people around, but there are communities in the surrounding area, and they need to be part of this for it to be successful. Maybe you could talk a little bit, Denis, about how you've worked to connect with the community and keep them on board, and the Indigenous community also, and then we'll have a last word from Rishi.
Yeah, like Rishi was saying, we have a heavy industrial zone that we want to convert to a green industrial zone. So we certainly want to continue in industrial development. So the community has had these industries in their backyard for close to 50, 75 years, but they're actually looking once again to cleaner industries, and this type of fuel provides that. We've been very outgoing with respect to public engagement. We currently are out over the next 18 months talking about hydrogen, talking about nuclear, talking about renewables to educate the general population. Projects will come behind that and explain specifically what their projects are. And as I mentioned before, we're the first port in Canada, and I would say probably one of the first areas of the country that we have a formal relationship in the development and deployment of this strategy with First Nations. So we're extremely proud of that. We operate very open and transparent approach, and I think that's the best way to succeed. So far things are going in the right direction, and we have a lot of public support as well.
Okay, thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Denis and Rishi? There's a mic here. We have about 2.5 minutes, I think.
Okay. My knowledge of AECL, nuclear plants that were the backbone for many years of the electricity in Canada, they have dwindled their generation. Some of the plants were shut off, and some are here. And now, what I see, if you're talking about 4 gigawatt, then they have to ramp up and come back and so on. Now, what is the general feeling about nuclear in this era after almost 20 years of a...
The Russian invasion, I think everyone knows, made clear that energy, both resiliency, security, and emissions are all important. There is very firm bipartisan support, very strong public support for Generation 4 nuclear in Canada, small modular reactors. New Brunswick Power has made an investment, major investments in the province into, the partner will be using our clean technology. That is a 100 to 150 megawatt reactor that produces a high degree of heat. And that heat we will be integrating into the electrolysis process to drive down the cost of hydrogen. So that means we can produce, right now, the modeling looks like it's 30-ish% or 25 to 30% less power per kilogram of hydrogen. But there's very strong support for this. And for decarbonization of industry, at Belledune, what we will have is heat power and hydrogen. So we can service your industry, not just hydrogen production, of course, for export to Europe, but other value-added products that Europe might need, steel, other heavy metallurgy, other chemicals, all of it in a decarbonized way can be produced at Belledune in a way that pretty much can't be produced outside of the G7.
And if I may, we realize that the SMR technology is still 6 or 7 or 8 years away, but New Brunswick has capabilities on renewables on land. So essentially, the phase 1 of the hydrogen will be with green energy, renewable energy that will be put on the grid. And as we mentioned before, our grid is very robust and can handle that energy coming on. So it's a two-step approach. Short term is with renewables, medium to long term can be hopefully with SMR technology.
And additional renewable generation. It's all going to be in the mix.
So I think our time is up. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Rishi and
everybody.
Denis. Thank you,
for
everyone,
joining us.
for joining us. And please check out our booth with the number 6 and check out Jeff Hoyt this afternoon at 3:30.